Derrick Rose are going to miss. Yeah.
Did you see that guy, that patient, Utah Jazz fan patient? That was hilarious.
Now Derrick Rose is probably going to end up in. Minnesota instead. So it's the entirety of the trade deadline yesterday made very little sense for most, and maybe a little bit of sense for many. But if the entirety of that is to try and get, it's basically to gear up for the summer whenever Paul George, LeBron, all these guys are free agents, I can't see how it's going to do a lot.
What's wrong with Melvin Frazier? Do you know?
No, I have no idea.
Didn't even play last night.
No one's going to use it.
Crazy. Old English. Let's do it. Dunc and Holder, back at you on Friday, February 9th. Muses parades are in the books, and Clad Verdan and I are riding solo without, I guess it's not solo, we're riding duo without
duo.
Sir Lawrence.
Yes, so instead of being a tricycle, we're a duo today, which, I mean, for a Country Fried Friday, which I know is his favorite day of the week. Feeling a little bit under the weather, so holding down the fort in his absence.
We didn't get the specifics of Larry's illness. I think it might be a touch of the Mardi Gras flu, and I'm sure he's not alone in New Orleans today. Our offices here at NOLA.com, we are downtown at the foot of Canal Street, and they are, I mean, I think tumbleweeds are blowing through. It's a typical Friday of Mardi Gras weekend, but we are soldiering on. Clad and I and David DeCorbier, our terrific producer, we're all working. Pounding the 9 to 5.
Absolutely, just like Dolly Parton.
What is the line from Bill Belichick? No days off.
No days off.
No days off.
Absolutely not. And I was at Muses last night. In fact, I was at all the parades last night. Fantastic time. And I mean, and for me, if you follow us on any of our social media pages, especially this time of year, which we have a lot of people out and about working the streets, covering all the parades, all the Mardi Gras action. I was out there last night, and one of the best parts of it was, well, I guess, pseudo best part. So there was allegedly some nefarious actions going on at St. Charles and Calliope last night, and it stalled the parade for what I think it was about maybe 30 or 40 minutes. But the Dead Rock guys, or I'm trying to think of the walking troupe that walk-in parades. I have it on my Twitter page. I don't know why I'm wasting time not looking up what they were, but basically this year's Dead Rock guy was Prince. So they basically had all these dudes dressed up in Prince's 1980s Purple Rain era, 1999 era clothing, and literally we got to listen to Prince for about 45 minutes. And me, as an unabashed Prince fan, I did not hate a single second of it.
Pretty awesome. And, we always have these delays at Mardi Gras. They're inevitable, and you have to enjoy them.
Yep.
So it always comes down to who's in front of you when the delay hits. Do you have a great group? It sounds like you were fortunate and had the serendipity of being in front of a Prince.
Oh, yeah, and absolutely. Because, obviously we've had a lot of people who passed away over the course of the last year. Tom Petty. And one of the great, I'm pretty sure it was Chaos Floats, was dedicated to Fats. So that was also a great float, too. So there was a lot of good stuff last night. I didn't get home until 11. I'm going back out there tonight to do more work. So MardiGras.com, Mardi Gras Facebook, Mardi Gras Twitter, Mardi Gras Instagram. That's where you can find all of our stuff. So great things.
At some point, we will talk sports today.
Maybe
on a Mardi Gras Friday. But we've got a great show today, even without Larry, and we will miss Larry's golden pipes as always. But we do have a good lineup today. 10:30 in the first hour. Brett Martell, our good friend from the Associated Press, he's going to visit with us to give us his, take on not only the Pelicans. He was at that game the other night, the infamous roof leak at the Smoothie King Center. We'll get his thoughts on that, and I think he talked to Doug Thornton about how everything went down.
Yeah.
I'd like to get his thoughts also on LSU and this Jimmy Garoppolo deal, which was a massive deal yesterday. We'll talk about that a little bit because that could have implications on the Drew Brees contract with the New Orleans Saints. Massive deal for Jimmy Garoppolo, and I am an unabashed Jimmy G groupie.
So
I have a man
really
crush
so
on
the
Jimmy G, like a lot of people, and I'm interested to see how that impacts the Saints, if it does. So we'll get Brett's thoughts on that right after Brett at 10:45. Speaking of golden pipes, the play-by-play man for the Tulane Green Wave, Todd Graffinini. Of course, Todd calls all the Green Wave athletic team games, and he had to call that heartbreaking loss for Tulane to Tulsa, an overtime loss, 91-89 for Tulane. A great effort by them, playing without their star, Melvin Frazier. They get beat down the stretch, and it's just a tough stretch right now for Mike Dunleavy's team. So we'll get his thoughts on Tulane men's hoop and also their signing class. And then at the second hour, Sean Jensen, an old friend of mine and Larry's, worked in the business covering the NFL for a long time up in the Minneapolis area. I didn't see Sean at the Super Bowl, but he was up there. And he wrote a really nice story in Minneapolis on Thomas Morstead, and also has a line of children's sports books that we want to help him promote. Sean will be on at 11:15, and then at 11:30, Joe Person, the Carolina Panthers beat writer for the Charlotte Observer. Joe, of course, has been on the program numerous times. We're going to get his thoughts. A lot of crazy stuff going on over in Charlotte. I saw Joe at the Super Bowl, but they've got coaching changes and still have an ownership search that they're trying to iron out. So I want to talk to him a little bit. He was a busy man in Charlotte trying to nail down a lot of the news that was breaking on his beat. And I know he got to talk to Roger Goodell about the Charlotte ownership situation because it's still up in the air. So we'll get Joe's thoughts on that. And then we'll talk anything else that comes to mind. If you want to join the program, we always want to get your thoughts. You can call us at 504-260-1280. That's the voice listener line, and you can talk to Dave, and we'll put you right on the program. We're wide open today. Otherwise, get Clyde stuck. I'm impressed, Clyde, that you were out being so late. The key question, though, for you, did you get a shoe last night?
Of course not. However, I was around
what do
three
you mean,
people.
Of course not.
Of course not. Well, because, I tried to get a shoe, but naturally, three people around me got shoes, including one of our very own staffers got a shoe. So I was clearly not looking good enough tonight. So
it's the one parade that you want to be a man at. Not the one of the few parades where we have the advantage.
Well, I didn't go home empty-handed, but let's just say I didn't get the golden goose, or should I say the golden rubber duck, last night. So I tried. I did everything I could. I tried looking cute. I tried looking sweet. I tried, trying to goad the old ladies, and it almost worked. I almost got one shoe, but we had some groups around us one dude got two shoes last night.
Well, I've seen, there's lots of gimmicks you can pull at Muses that work. I've seen the basketball goal, and you put write a message on the backboard, throw the shoe here.
Oh, there were lots of that last night.
You get bombarded. Those things work, but it seems cheap to me to use those kind of games. But then I'm not above that sometimes.
Yeah, of course not. We had no less than 10 signs around us last night, which if for the uninitiated who may not know the full details, but like obviously every Mardi Gras or every Mardi Gras season, carnival season, there's going to be every crew, every group has one throw that is like the hot item of the year. And if you go to Muses, they do this elaborate shoe.
Yeah, they work on them for months, right?
Months. And I mean, some of the shoes that we saw last night were fantastic.
They're mostly high heels.
Yeah, high heels. So you're never going to wear these, but I mean, they're items that you remember. Those, and then obviously another one of the most coveted throws are always the Zulu coconuts, which that's Tuesday.
Yes.
So a lot of people are going to be trying to get those Zulu coconuts on Tuesday. But yeah, it was fantastic last night. Really great. The bands were great. I was talking about this, because I was thinking about this last night, is what I think it's, well, not completely overlooked, but I've been fortunate enough working with our colleague Jim Derry to be able to cover a lot of prep games in the during the high school football season, and I've been able to see a wealth of the high school bands in the area. And we saw most of them last night, including my favorite, which is the Edna Carr Band. The Edna Carr Band is
why are they your favorite?
I think, well, number one, I think the way they for my money carry themselves in terms of how they go about their formations. Hashtag formation. If you didn't know, they were in Beyonce's formation video. Some of the car drum line guys were. But the way they line up and their breadth of songs and the way that they're arranged are fantastic. But I mean, that's better
than St. Aug.
St. Aug was there last night too. And St. Aug was there last night too. The Marching 100. They were fantastic. They were awesome. I mean, they were there. 35's band was there. Carr's band was there. Helen Cox band, Carver. So many great bands. And I think that I was fortunate enough, and I would encourage anyone else, if you come out to the parades, really, really show some love to not only the military personnel, which I guess they're going to actually get to march because the government shutdown isn't happening now, but the bands that go through, like this is their Super Bowl. This is what they gear up for every year. This is how they make a lot of their money for their programs, things like that. So if you go out, they're going to play some great music and do some great work. And yeah, if you're out there tonight, come find us. We're at the corner of St. Charles and Napoleon, right next to Superior Seafood. So
yeah, you're right near Superior.
Yeah,
Pat Harry's Ground Zero
location. Yes,
right where the parade turns onto St. Charles. That's where we're set up. We've been set up there for a long time. And come by and say hi. Clyde will be large and in charge, dominating the scene as he always does, and hopefully getting more trinkets than you got last night. I'm surprised you didn't get a shoe.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Yeah, I was a little. I mean, but it's fine though. Like you see kids around, and there was this adorable kid next to me, and I was like, all right, well, I'm not getting anything because this kid's gonna get everything. And the first thing that like Chaos threw him, or Babylon threw him was this light up like pseudo flambeau torch. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to get anything tonight because I'm not going to beat that. There's no way.
And we are, as I've always said, your social aid and pleasure club of the Sports Talk radio dial. Duncan Holder here. And we're going to take an early break, and then we'll get back to Brett Martell going to join us. Actually, he's going to join us after the second break. But we're going to come back and talk a little bit of the news of the day about the Pelicans and get into some NBA talk after this early break right here at Duncan Holder. You're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Out on the streets, the traffic starts jumping with folks like me on the job from 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5. What a way to make a living. Barely getting by. It's all taking and no giving. They just use your mind and they never give you credit.
Josh Innes is moving to mornings.
I am.
We've ordered
Old Dolly.
Old
Bailey's Irish Cream.
Queen of
She's still
Dixieland.
alive?
Yeah, she's still alive. She's still kicking. She did this long-ranging expose on.
I'm live from inside a perfectly paired
I think it was either NPR or Rolling Stone about her career and about who she's worked with.
Frame lowers 2 dozen roses inside, and up top, huge
I'd watch that.
berries are coated with chocolate chips. I do love berries.
This Valentine's Day, think inside the box with a perfectly paired gift. Visit proflowers.com now and enter code.
I was thinking about that with
for 20%.
I was past the Smooth King Center today, and with Elton John's farewell tour going on
Coming here?
Yeah.
When's, that's like the summer, right?
Yeah, that's the summer.
Hey, what are you doing
Yeah,
up here?
Sways off.
I want to tell the world I just met the woman of my dreams. What about you?
I wanted to tell the world that Liberty Mutual saved me $782.
Liberty did what?
They saved me $782.
Oh, you go first then. $782 really puts finding love into perspective.
Visit us online to get a quote, and you could save $782.
We'll just said that Joel Embiid is questionable
Mutual
tonight with an ankle problem.
Gosh, customer survey
be the greatest thing ever for them.
Mutual Insurance Company, equal housing insurer.
It's 3 p.m.
Because they don't have anybody can check him.
Absolutely
nobody.
Nobody.
For 50 million kids
Unless
across
you want to throw a Mecca Okafor out there and then,
and for a
hope
third
and
of
pray.
these kids, they're out on their own.
I don't think that would be pretty.
Out with nothing to do and nowhere to go. Gives a whole new meaning to the 3 o'clock bell, doesn't it? It's time to support the Boys and Girls Clubs. Visit greatfutures.org.
Who's that voice?
That's Denzel.
Is that Denzel?
Yeah,
I thought it might be.
Kylie Jenner and her new baby taking Instagram by storm. A pic of baby Stormy,
shocked.
her reality TV star mom. Now the most liked photo on the platform.
That makes one of us.
Down to second place, Beyonce and her twins.
I literally could not. If I could care less about something in this world other than
once again
whether or not a
that she won't be
Kardashian
making
Jenner
a run for the White
has
House.
a baby,
Speculation
I
about an
really
Oprah
could
Winfrey
not.
candidacy took
Couldn't
off
tell
after
you.
her powerful speech about race and gender at the Golden Globe Awards. She was interviewed by Hamilton's Lin-Manuel Miranda for her Oprah Super Soul Conversation series on OWN at New York's Apollo Theater. That's when Winfrey again knocked down the rumors. Miranda was talking about his social media clout, joking, "I'm not running for public office." That's when Oprah interrupted to say, "I'm not either." Fresh from leaving the White House where she served in the Trump administration, Omarosa back to work on reality TV. The former Apprentice star making her first appearance on CBS's Big Brother Celebrity Edition, competing against others for a shot at this season's prize money. She said if she's learned anything from her stint in politics, it's that you have to watch her back.
If you wanna be my lover.
The Spice Girls are hitting the road for a reunion.
Spice Girls!
British
I can't wait.
Talks with their former
I didn't
manager
know that
about
they
a world
broke
trip.
up. They're a reunion
This
tour.
summer in the UK and in
I mean,
They
they
just
kinda-
went their separate ways.
Yeah,
or-
well, I mean, obviously Victoria didn't have much to do except work on her face because David Beckham was playing soccer. The only one that, the only, literally, I think the only one that's done, well, Melby has.
Hi, I'm Nick Jonas.
Melby has done stuff. She's on.
I love how you know their names.
Yeah, Melby, or should I say Sporty Spice, Victoria, Beckham,
Ginger? Is Ginger a Spice or not?
Ginger Spice? Yeah, Ginger Spice.
Yeah,
And
thank
then you have Baby Spice, Emma.
Crazy. I'm crazy for feeling.
This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back. Jeff Duncan, Clad Verdan, David DeCorbier. Back with Duncan Holder. Larry Holder's got the day off. He's not feeling well. We wish Larry the best. Hope he feels better. Bad time to not be feeling well.
Yeah.
Mardi Gras time.
Yeah.
And it looks like the weather's going to cooperate today.
Yeah.
It did yesterday. It was spectacular yesterday.
It was fantastic weather.
But I hear this weekend looks a little rainy, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So in Endymion, and look, I talked to Steve Gleason the other day. We were talking, by the way, his new life and sports skills camps. If you're interested, you're a parent out there, you've got a young boy from 9 to 14 years old, his life skills camps are incredible, and they're limited to 60 registrants. So you kind of got to get in while you can, and they just started taking registration for the second camp. I think it's the 24th and 25th of February, later this month, at Tulane University. And you can go out, get some great baseball instruction. Delgado Community College, the baseball team there, is going to be hands-on, Joe Sherman's group. And Steve will also be there to give your son or whoever, your young boy that you're friends with, you can learn from the best. You can learn from Steve Gleason, not only about being a great athlete and what you need to do to be successful and competitive, but also off the field, which is where Steve Gleason arguably excels more than he did on the field. And he had an incredible career at Washington State University. And I don't think people know this, Clyde, but Steve was a great baseball player. He starred in high school. Mm-hmm. He was a starting center fielder for 3 years at Washington State University, in addition to being an all Pac-10 linebacker. And he's big time into baseball. Also, you would love, because he's huge into soccer. He was a really good soccer player growing up. And he's huge into Euro League soccer and
Euro League soccer,
whatever it is over there.
You make it sound like darts.
I don't know. He's into all that thing. He's into basically any kind of sports, but his camps focus on a certain sport. This one's going to be baseball again because we're getting ready for spring training.
But he's also going to have a basketball-focused camp later, a football-focused camp, soccer as well, tennis, I think, golf. Basically, you can focus on a certain sport. He'll have experts, and then he'll be there to kind of speak to all the campers as well. It's a great camp. I've heard great things about the first one that they had in the fall, and it's $125. You can find information on that at GleasonClinics.com online. And get in while you can, because they only take 60 registrants. So it should be a good time.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to get that plug out there. And the reason I thought of that segue is I was talking to Steve the other day, and he's going to be in Endymion on Saturday, which is kind of his home parade. He kind of has been living, for the most part, most of his tenure here in the Mid-City area. He kind of has an affinity for Endymion. And if you're looking for Steve, he's going to be out front with the Grand Marshals, I think, in the early part of the parade. I don't think he's going to be on a float. I think he's actually going to be rolling toward the front of the parade. So look for Steve and the Team Gleason entourage. That's the same parade that Alvin Kamara and Marshawn Lattimore are going to be riding in.
You imagine they're going to have whatever float they're on is going to be pretty lit up, and you're going to know it's them from a mile away.
Yeah, and Endymion's always an awesome parade. And I've got friends coming in from out of town that are going to the ball on Saturday night. And I told them, get ready. They've never been to it before. Get ready. It's an all-day sucker, if you will. You'll be there late at night, but it's a great day. And I know it doesn't look great for the weather forecast, but they still throw a great party for Endymion.
It's going to be a great party. It's going to be a great weekend regardless.
All right, so let's talk a couple of things real quick. The Pels get back in action tonight. They play in Philadelphia. This is not going to be an easy game against the Sixers. Our own Will Guillory now reporting that Joel Embiid is questionable. Is that what he is for tonight?
Yes, he says he's questionable with an ankle problem, so he might not be a go tonight, and that might actually be really, really good news for the Pelicans, just because the way Embiid's playing, obviously he's playing at an all-star level. That could actually be good for them in terms of matchup problems for the Pelicans, while they have to deal with, obviously, triple-double threat every night, Ben Simmons.
Yeah, and I tell you, the Pels are really in a difficult spot right now. Roster-wise, they're trying to incorporate in some new players that they've acquired, obviously still adjusting to life without DeMarcus Cousins. And meanwhile, everybody around them is winning. The Portland Trail Blazers, they won their last game. The Nuggets right ahead of them, a half game ahead of the Pels in the Western Conference standings, have won 3 in a row, right behind the Pelicans in the Western Conference race. The Clippers have won 2 in a row, and then behind them, Utah has won 7 in a row. And even the Lakers, of all teams, you can't count them out. They've won 4 in a row. Everyone around the Pelicans is winning. The Pels have lost, of course, 2 in a row and 4 of 5 since Cousins went out. They could really use a win tonight for their confidence.
Absolutely. And, they're going into a game with Philadelphia. Philadelphia's in the 8th spot right now. They're 26-25 overall. They won their last time out. So, obviously, the biggest thing for the Pelicans is that really this season at this point, they can't get to the All-Star break fast enough. The trade deadline was yesterday, which, if you may have been under a rock, the Pelicans acquired Rashad Vaughn. Rashad Vaughn, who has been with Brooklyn and Milwaukee. He's a 6'6", kind of swing forward. You can probably expect him to get a considerable amount of playing time so far, just because at this point they're looking for any willing and able bodies that can score, but that can also play even a modicum of defense. And that's clearly where the only issue lies with this team. It's not talent. It's not the fact that they aren't all-star worthy. It's the fact that at some point during games, they have to decide to play defense if they don't make shots, whether that's in the third quarter, the first quarter, the final minutes. You've got to find some guys that are playing defense. But yesterday's trade deadline was absolutely bonkers. Completely bananas.
It was bananas.
I mean, so many trades that we can't even keep up with because guys have moved from one spot to another spot, may have moved to a second spot. You've got Cavaliers basically imploding their entire team and bringing in a lot of youth.
It looked like yesterday that Fletcher Mackel was running the NBA.
Yes.
He was just trading every player on the Cavs. I think Fletcher Mackel somehow became the general manager of the Cavaliers yesterday.
I wouldn't put it past him. And, I mean, that may have been also a part trade, which if you saw on the Pelicans Twitter account, they put it in the trade machine. Somehow they were able to put Fletcher to Memphis for unlimited ribs. I was like, I know some people in Tennessee. Let me give them a call. We can make this happen. Let's do it.
Wow. And did you see yesterday, by the way, I think this had to do with Larry not showing up today. Did you see the King Cake Baby called him out?
Oh yeah, which I mean, someone who works the Dunc and Holder Twitter account maybe egg that on a little bit, but I mean, obviously the King Cake Baby is coming. He's going straight for heads, man. He doesn't care,
and so he
don't care.
He wants to make another visit, but he wants Larry to be here, and I think Larry, I don't know, all of a sudden he doesn't show up today. He's sick, quote unquote sick, right a day after the King Cake Baby calls him out on Twitter.
Yeah, maybe he has some kind of he has an allergic reaction to Mardi Gras colored sugar on top of king cakes and icing.
Yeah, deductive reasoning here tells me that Larry might be backing down, but I would too if King Cake Baby wanted to haunt me in any way.
He's not that. King Cake Baby's not that bad. It's fine.
I don't know about that. Well, look, they need a win tonight. We'll talk to Brett Martell after the break about the Pels. He was at the game the other night at the Smoothie King Center. And look, I know it's fun to make fun of everything that happened. Nobody got hurt. They had to cancel the game. But I do want to say this is not the first time that a game has had issues with the leak. I mean, it's happened a bunch of times over the years at other arenas. It's not good. It's a bad look. But let's not go overboard here. It happens.
It's just one of those things where when it rains, it pours.
Oh,
sorry for
nice
the pun.
pun.
Yeah, nice pun, right? That's what I do. But when it rains, it pours. And obviously, with losing Boogie, with the kind of tailspin the team is on before the All-Star break, and then having a roof leak to postpone a game that they're going to have to now jam into the schedule at some point after the All-Star break, it's just one of those things where the hits keep coming. And the Pelicans, I'm sure, are wondering, when is it going to stop?
Well, I'm wondering how they do fit that game back in. And when they fit it back in, does the league decide, okay, let's just see if we need it? And maybe they don't have to fit it back in if it doesn't factor in.
Well, the Pelicans already put out last night that the game is going to be played at some point in the future. The league, I guess, will decide with both teams, but that parking will be free that game and for everybody.
Yeah,
and all tickets will be valid for that game. So, you got to play it because everybody's got to play 82 unless, there's other mitigating circumstances. But it just stinks because now they're going to have to figure out where they're going to put this game after the All-Star break, amid, I'm sure, what's already going to be a challenging schedule with 32 games left, now 33.
But timing-wise, it might work out better because they, like we said, they've had a bunch of trades, not a bunch, but they've had some trades. Yeah. They're trying to work in Nikola Mirotic into the lineup. They're adjusting without Cousins. Maybe it's not the worst thing that they didn't have to play that game because they had so much roster flux. Yeah. And we didn't even talk about, but I mean, they were making a lineup change, going to start DeAndre Liggins.
Yeah.
Insert him in the starting lineup and really bring in Rajon Rondo off the bench, trying to bolster their second unit, but I also think it's kind of been an overlooked story. Rajon Rondo's role has been diminished. Yeah. I mean, he is no longer in the game at the end of games. He's not finishing games, and his minutes have dwindled. And this is a guy that was ballyhooed and touted when they signed him. I mean, they were acting like they got the fourth musketeer to go with Drew, Boogie, and the Brow. And Rondo now looks like a bench player, a role player.
Yeah, and I think Brett will have a lot more on that because he's seen the evolution of Rondo's minutes and kind of season from the start of the year to the almost devolution from the start of the season to now.
All right, well, speaking of Brett, let's talk to him after the break. We'll take a break right now, and when we come back, we'll hear from Brett Martell on Leak Gate at the Smoothie King Center and also get his thoughts on the Pels as they go to Philadelphia tonight. The world champion Eagles had their big parade yesterday, so it should be interesting tonight how many people turn out. Is everybody jumping on the bandwagon now in Titletown?
Absolutely.
Philadelphia. All right, you're listening to Dunc and Holder, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. Stay with us.
My daddy is grounded like the oak tree. My mama, she is steady as the sun.
Nice.
Your forecast on Sports 1280.
Little Sarah Evans right there.
I love how you know that.
This report is brought to you by 1 Hour
You're crazy.
I am crazy. Literally, I'm crazy like a fox.
From the Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Bruce Katz. Today looking good through the afternoon. Partly cloudy skies, a high of 72. Now tonight, more clouds increase with a slim chance.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
And
it looks like whatever rain's coming is not coming until after midnight.
The weekend is the challenge.
Yeah, it could be another really good clear night. Like you just feel bad for the.
We will see some
just feel bad for like Bacchus and Endymion the next 2 nights and hoping that they can get the same kind of luck.
So we're going to have to keep an eye to the sky. Plan for some wet parades over the upcoming weekend. From the Fox 8 Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Bruce Katz with your Weather Authority forecast.
Together with Mike Rowe, 1 Hour encourages you to choose life.
All right, we got Brett.
How about sweet?
And a minute and some change.
Awesome.
855-1-HOUR.
When the Cavaliers play the Hawks in Atlanta tonight, fans will definitely need to recheck the roster.
It's
a big-time
craziness,
makeover for
Cavs
Cleveland
stuff.
Thursday at the trade deadline. The team dealing Isaiah Thomas, Dwayne Wade, and Derrick Rose.
I mean,
along with
Isaiah
3
Thomas,
others
that was
with
like a total
first-round
bust.
pick and
That was a total
three
bust.
I mean, a
There's
complete
no other.
bust.
But
They got
listen,
Kyrie Irving for basically nothing.
pretty much.
First
Yeah,
round pick.
and Boston now is going to be the number 1, number 2 seed because
And they're talking about maybe getting Hayward back for the playoffs.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, I don't know how they work him in. Maybe just spot minutes or something.
Look, there was a thing last night on SportsCenter I caught before I passed out quickly. So obviously LeBron hit the game-winning shot against Minnesota. So he hits a game-winning shot. He goes like
Looked like Christian Laettner, by the way.
Yeah, I know, right? He just with that step back and then like
same shot.
right here.
Change is something we preach all the time.
Well,
At halftime, we talked about defending,
SportsCenter counted
rebounding,
all the
playing with a great
teammates
deal of effort.
that he
That's
actually,
things we push.
LeBron James,
With a
quote
win,
unquote,
Carolina
interacted
moves to
with.
7-5 in the ACC. The Blue
And he
Devils
only,
are
quote unquote,
7-4.
interacted with
Sports
all the guys that are still left on the team. He didn't get, like, Derrick Rose was like, Isaiah was trying to get in. Nope.
That's what's so
All
funny
the,
is
like Tristan, all those guys.
But all those guys were his guys.
I know, and that's that's a
It's
terrible
like
thing,
that's
too.
part of the problem is that they made him the GM.
Yeah.
And so he was taking care of all his buddies at Clutch Sports.
It's your home. This is where you.
Welcome back. Jeff Duncan, Clyde Verdun with you. Duncan Holder, and visiting with us now, one of our favorite guests, Brett Martell, the Associated Press, Renaissance man.
Person who actually saw yesterday on the parade route.
You saw Brett on the
yeah.
parade? That's
Oh,
true.
yeah.
Brett always posts up right there in that area. Brett, did you work the parents' stand last night? Don't you do that from year to year?
Yeah, I do. I was in there. There's a concession trailer near the corner of Napoleon and St. Charles in front of the little school for the Academy of the Sacred Heart where my daughter goes. And, yeah, they've got pretty good red beans and rice and gumbo over there, as well as a good selection of drinks. And it's right next to the cleanest portalettes on the parade route. And you can pay $1 per use and whatever. All that money goes to support the school. So that's where I tend to be when I go to the parades.
Yeah, that's a good spot, kind of ground zero right there. You can see there's always some anticipation, I think, from that vantage point. You see the parade floats turning onto St. Charles Avenue. There's this kind of anticipation. Here comes another big float, and the kids start going crazy. It's a really good spot. I think one of the best spots to watch, and it's obviously very crowded there because of that exact reason. But let's turn our attention to sports, even though Mardi Gras, I think you can make an argument, is a sport in New Orleans. We want to talk Pelicans, and in particular, I want to ask you about the leak situation the other night. We talked to Will Guillory about it the other day, but from your perspective, could they have played that game the other night, or do you think it was just done in the best interest of the health of the athletes to not play? And also, I don't know. I guess this is what we do in New Orleans. We love to make fun of the theater of the absurd, but it seems to me like this is getting overplayed a little bit. It's happened before at other arenas, and it won't be the first or last time that we see a game either delayed or even postponed because of a leak in a roof.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of weird postponements in my day, but I come from New England where the Bruins used to play in Boston Garden, and they had a Stanley Cup Finals game fogged out because the air conditioning system wasn't working well enough, and it was a hot, humid day in early June, and there was fog coming off the ice.
Nice.
And so it was unplayable between the Edmonton Oilers and the Boston Bruins. And this is the Stanley Cup Finals we're talking about. I know that building doesn't exist anymore, and that stuff doesn't happen as much. But the fact of the matter is, that's the original roof on the Smoothie King Center. They had recently done some roof work. The roof is due to be replaced, actually, in the next few years. But that place opened in 1999. So we're going on a 20-year-old roof. And it's generally it's been well maintained, but there's been other delays where just like even in modern arenas where they have ice under the floor because there's an NHL tenant there as well as NBA, where sometimes you can have moisture coming up through the floor.
Right.
In this case, the players apparently were worried that the makeshift fix which was basically a fabric catch basin that was hanging from the rafters under where they spotted the water coming
Don't
down.
get me started on that thing. That contraption. Who thought that up? Was that Alan Freeman's idea? What was going on with that? You tell me that it's form over function, right?
Yeah. Well, because if you want to do something quickly that's going to catch the water, I mean, that's kind of the way to do it. Because you want, a hard material catch basin would be too heavy to kind of install without welding, right?
Right.
But here's an area where you can just basically take fabric and catch it. You can take a large piece of fabric, as long as the fabric is, the kind of, like a tarp type thing where the water won't go through it. You can spread it over a large area and catch all the water. And he was very confident that it would work and that it would work for the duration of the game. But, it doesn't look that high tech or whatever, or foolproof. And so
I think Anthony Davis looked at that thing and said, no, thank you.
Nah.
Yeah, he looked at that. He also examined the floor, and he felt like he could still, even though the floor was dry, he could see where the water had fallen. I don't know if he felt like there was the floor, if it affected the varnish or whatever, but he said it felt different to him there. And they were also worried that, these floors are pieced together after, in between events because there's concerts and so forth. And so they're not impervious to water. And so what could happen is that water could seep through the cracks over time. And then as the players are pounding on it, it could be kind of through pressure forced back up through the cracks. And so there was also a little bit of a concern about that. The building staff was very confident that the game could have been played without a problem. The officials seemed inclined to get the game going, too. So they seemed to think it was safe. But the coaches took the sides of the players because I think they felt the players were a little mentally checked out after the delay had gone long enough. And also, if, at that level of sports, you do have to be 100% committed mentally. And if you're out there playing tentatively, it can make for a bad situation, in terms of just the game being ugly. And sometimes, it actually can cause an injury if you're not, if you're playing a little bit distracted. So, they just didn't, they just felt like the guys are checked out. They don't feel comfortable out there. It just doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of what happened.
Well, Brett, transitioning from, I guess, off the court matters to at least some on the court matters, I guess we should be thankful that the Pelicans aren't the Cavs right now and have, well, what I guess we could term as a terrible locker room atmosphere. But you've been in the Pelicans locker room the last few weeks and obviously much of the season. With the Pelicans kind of going through this really strange quasi kind of shifting of the team with players coming in and out in trades and Boogie getting hurt, what's the mood been like in the locker room in terms of after some of these losses and after some of these key wins? It just feels like there've been an ebb and flow. What's the mood of the locker room overall from what you've seen so far over the last few weeks and much of the season?
It's almost like there's this palpable sense of resignation that no one wants to admit, and they're trying to put a positive face on it. I think that nobody wants to give up, and they say they still have some good players, and they're trying to be professionals, and they want to win. They've invested too much into this, and basically it's just kind of like, maybe.
Whoa, did we lose Brett there?
Brett's still there?
I think we lost Brett. Brett is maybe entered into the Bermuda Triangle of
or just one
cell
of the
phone
many,
coverage.
Or just one of the many dead spots in the city that somehow can eat up cell phones and then just cut you right off. So,
or do we know where the King Cake Baby is? Did the King Cake Baby not like where this conversation was going from Brett, talking about resignation, maybe used his powers to out Brett Martell? That's just speculation. I don't want to go too far.
Yeah,
I certainly don't want to anger King Cake Baby.
I'm back if you guys are.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, you are. Did you go into some kind of cave? What happened there?
I don't know. So on my cell phone, you never know what this.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. So resignation, I sense that, and you can kind of hear it in the voices of some of the players. They're trying to almost talk themselves into something.
That's kind of the sense I get, But again, I don't want to go too hard in that direction just because it's really impossible to, obviously get inside their minds, and unless they actually say what they mean, it's hard to know. But yeah, I think that what their mindset is basically that we know it's a huge uphill battle because we not only lost a guy producing about 26 and 13, but losing him forces them to change the scheme that they've been working on refining the entire season. So, that makes it,
Brett? What do you make?
Makes it really tough.
What do you make of Alvin Gentry's decision to make a lineup change? He's going to start DeAndre Liggins. They're going to pull Rajon Rondo off the bench. I'm trying to figure this out. Obviously, they're trying to improve the defense, but it does strike me as one of the unwritten, underreported stories of the year, or something very few people are talking about, is how Rondo's role has been diminished here. I mean, this was a guy that they touted in the offseason, was their marquee signing of the offseason, and now he's basically been reduced to a role player here.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the way it looks. Although, before we totally say he's a role player, I guess we'll have to see the kind of minutes he logs coming out of that, coming off the bench, and whether he's in at crunch time. But you're right, he hasn't been in at crunch time a lot, and I think it's because he seems to be a defensive liability, maybe, And one of the things they're trying to do clearly is to help Drew Holiday not have to exert. They know they're going to rely on him so much more offensively. They don't want him to have to exert so much effort on defense, particularly in the first half. They want him to be as fresh as possible down the stretch. So we'll have to see how the rotations go. But defense has been a problem for the Pelicans all year, and they're really trying to deal with it. And maybe they'll get a boost when Solomon Hill comes back in that area, because he was really good for them defensively last year. But, he's coming back for the last third of the season maybe, and you can't really count on that in terms of him being in, mid-season form. So we'll just have to see. But, yeah, I guess it's disappointing overall that they're not able to get more out of Rondo, especially in crunch time.
Hey, switching gears real quick. We got about a minute left in this segment, but I want to get your thoughts real quick on the Jimmy Garoppolo deal. Do you think that will have an impact on the deal Drew Brees and Tom Condon try to negotiate with the Saints?
Yeah, I think anything that sets the market is some kind of influence, because I think for Drew, essentially, Drew's not in the same position because he's nearing the end of his career. He's made a lot of money. Drew has to figure out, what is it worth to me to remain in New Orleans with a team that's competitive in an offense where I thrive, figure out what that value is, and then take that off of where the market is set. So the higher the market goes, the higher Drew Brees' contract has to go in some respects. But I think that Drew's calculations are entirely different than a guy like Garoppolo, who's at the beginning of his career. And although Tom Condon, Drew's agent, likes to push the envelope, he'll ultimately do what Drew wants him to do.
I agree with that. I think Drew is calling the shots there, much to the dismay of Tom Condon. Brett Martell, Associated Press, joining us as always, and we appreciate the visit, Brett, and hope you don't enter into the Bermuda Triangle again. You scared us there, but we appreciate your visit as always.
All right. Take care. Always good to be with you guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too. Brett Martell, Associated Press. Knows his stuff, man. He always takes a positive spin.
Yeah.
He's not like me. He's not negative Nelly.
Yeah. He you don't feel like he's going to go on an unintelligible rant for some reason because it was cold in Minnesota or something. But I think you're right. I think he brought up some really great points, and specifically, I think until this Drew Brees deal gets done, I think Saints fans specifically are going to be on edge, and I think not that they have any reason to be, but I really do think that until that gets done, it's going to be the one thing that Saints fans look to as, when is it going to get done? When is it going to get done? When are talks starting? And when it eventually does, and by all accounts we believe it will, then hopefully, we can move on to other pressing matters such as tight end, defense, things like that.
And we will move on to other pressing matters after this break and talk to Todd Graffinini, voice of the Tulane Green Wave, when we come back right here on Dunc and Holder, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. Stay with us.
Before WrestleMania 34,
WWE NXT takes over New Orleans Saturday night, April 7th. Enter to win tickets now.
I didn't realize that Gene Gilead
also on sale at the Smoothie King Center
was
box
a
office
wrestling
and
guy.
Ticketmaster.com.
I'm going to get him to do
iHeartRadio celebrates the contributions of African American
column
artists
on
to every style of music, from funk to jazz,
the Wildcat
blues to
wrestling
hip-hop,
out in the
and so much more. Hear music
like
from
the
the artists
amateur
that inspired
professional semi-pro.
and continue to influence
Gotta get
pop
him to
culture
do that.
today.
I didn't know he'd probably get into that. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Marvin, Tupac, Diana Ross, and so many more. Listen to their special playlists.
Did you see
or
the
iHeartRadio
Louisiana Tech guy
original
get the
stations
technical
like
get
Urban
kicked
Pop
out of the game
Classics.
last night?
No,
for
I didn't.
Dunking on some
Providing the
dude and didn't
soundtrack
do
to Black
anything.
History Month, all February.
He didn't do anything. He just dunked on the guy. I mean, I
And
guess
it was on beIN Sports. Fantastic.
He kind of did something. Watch. I mean, like he kind of looked at him, but like.
All right, 30 seconds and we got Graf.
Thanks, bud.
Sweet.
Flavored with New Orleans dark rum, folded in a light vanilla cream.
going on here?
Sound decadent? Well, then head on over to
hold on.
3501 Hesper or 4949 West Napoleon or MauriceFrenchPastries.com.
Kicked him out of the game.
That's weak. And that's kind of what we were talking about. Shoot for the
Officials are out of control.
Officials are out of control.
Well, that official.
Everybody's out of control. Teddy Valentine's out of control. Players are out of control. TV 10's out of control. Players are out of control. Everybody's out of control. Everybody needs to take a chill pill, relax.
You sound like you're out of control.
Not yet. Someone just asked me about U.S. soccer. I'm about to lose it.
This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Welcome back. Country Fried Friday. Jeff Duncan, Clyde Verdun, Larry Holder out sick today. We're wishing him the best. And we also always wish the best to Todd Graffinini, our next guest, joining us from somewhere in the New Orleans area. Where are you at today, Todd?
Jeff, I'm actually in Tulsa. We're still here.
You're still there? I thought you might have come back.
We're going straight to Houston. So
that makes sense.
We're playing Houston on Sunday, and it's an extended road trip over the Mardi Gras holiday. What a coincidence! What a coincidence!
You don't say.
Well, look, that was a heartbreaker, man. That was a heartbreaker. I thought a very valiant effort without Melvin Frazier, one of your best players, to go into overtime. That was one that I'm sure has to be disappointing to let get away.
Well, Jeff, we also were without Rayon Ambo last night as well. He did not play. We actually had two starters out for the entire game. Of course, Melvin, our top scorer and best defender. Rayon Ambo, then our point guard. He's missed one start in his 2-year career. So what those guys did last night in this building where Tulane has won one time in its history, I thought just really showed a lot. Saw a lot of heart. We saw a lot of guts last night, and you'd think for once the basketball gods would smile down on us, but it just wasn't meant to be, man. You know, we had a chance to win at the end of regulation and couldn't hit some free throws. They tied it up. We had a shot to win it, didn't make it, and then, of course, what happened in overtime, you know, you had a shot again, and it's cruel. And what's even more cruel, Jeff, is that we're back in the same building this morning. They're working out. We're going to practice on the same floor. So it's you're coming back to the scene of the crime, not 12 hours later.
That's brutal.
Fair, man.
Brutal. Yeah. Now you got to go to Houston, who has really put things together. They're 8-3 in conference. Looks like Cincinnati might run away with this thing. But what's the challenge now in trying to turn the page on that heartbreaking loss? And is there any chance that Melvin Frazier and Embo get back in the lineup?
We'll see. Look, Houston's really, really good, and they're going to come out guns blazing against us because we actually beat them in New Orleans about a month ago. So the challenge is big. You know, Melvin's injury, it's funky, and I'm using a New Orleans term there, but you know, he got hit on a screen, and basically he bruised his collarbone. There's nothing structurally wrong, but he is in a world of pain, and it's just very hard for him to get his arms above his shoulders. And, you know, he's been trying to shoot free throws and just kind of work it out. Now, every day he gets a little bit better, but it's really a pain tolerance thing with Melvin, and he just hasn't been able to get it done. Ona Embo, it's been a different issue because he's got really sore fingers right now on his right hand. His index finger and his middle finger have been taped together for the last 3 games, and it has really affected his shot. He's 0 for his last 10 shooting threes, and he's a really solid three-point shooter. And I think Coach Dunleavy said yesterday is, I'm looking at Ray down on the floor right now. The fingers are taped. I think he's going to try to give it a go in practice today, but I think rest is really the only thing that he can do. We'll see what happens Sunday. The good thing about last night, if you want to take a positive out of it, Jeff, is that guys who really have had no roles at all on the team this year, or a limited role, I should say, really stepped up and played well last night. And I'm talking right away off the top of my head, Colin Slater, who's our backup point guard, maybe plays, 8-9 minutes a night at best. Played 44 out of a possible 45 minutes last night. Scored career-high 14 points and dished out a career-high 7 assists and only turned it over twice. So he did that in the absence of Rayona Embo. So if that leads to the confidence level of Colin Slater, maybe you could take something positive out of it. But we were down, Jeff. We were down to walk-ons in overtime. They had fouled out 4 of our guys to 0 for Tulsa. We almost had a hockey type situation in a power play when we're playing 5-on-4 and 5-on-3. If we'd have gone another overtime, that is exactly what would have happened. We had nobody left. And you got guys like Cameron Gallick, who had played 1 minute all year long, getting a rebound in overtime, giving us a chance to win the game. So, again, so many guys stepped up. It was a shame that we couldn't pull it out, man. It was a shame.
Yeah, it was good to see Jordan Cornish get back on track, too, because he's been up and down this year. Yep. And, look, going to Houston won't be easy. That's at 6 o'clock tip-off over in Houston. When do y'all leave later today?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, I'm sorry. When do you leave, later today? Or?
We're going to practice here. We're going to go to the airport. We're going to fly to Houston and spend about a day and a half. They're going to practice and everything. I'm fortunate. I got brothers that are in Houston, so I'll get to hang out with them. And, yeah, it's going to be a long stretch. I guess I'll be watching parades on my computer. So what are you going to do? I heard y'all talking about Endymion earlier. Sunday's always been my day. I love Sunday, Toth, and, I'm an uptown guy, so I always go early on in the parade, back, near Audubon Park, catch Toth, and then, of course, move on to St. Charles and watch Bacchus, which, since I was a kid has always been my favorite parade. So, sometimes it happens with the schedule and when Mardi Gras comes and, whatever season it is, be it basketball or baseball season for me, sometimes you get lucky and there are no games or you get Sunday off or whatever. It just happened this year that we're on the road, but, there's always next year. Yep.
Hey, a nice segue here. I was speaking the other day about those sweet Mardi Gras uniforms that Tulane has, and lo and behold, they are available if you want to be involved. Tell people how they can get their hands on one of these sweet green, purple, and gold Mardi Gras Tulane uniforms.
Well, they are being auctioned off, and they are going to be the uniforms that these guys are wearing in game action. We're going to wear them one more time in that Houston game. So if you want to bid on them, I want to say there's maybe 3 days left.
Yeah, it looks like 4 right now.
Yeah, 4 days left. You want to go to TulaneGreenWave.com, and there's a spot on the website. I believe it's gifts, and you hit that, and then you'll see auction and hit auctions, and you can go bid on them. Minimum bid is $250. I've seen some bids already at the $300 mark. So look, these things are awesome. I've been saying it from the get-go when they kind of paraded them out, to borrow a term. And I have not heard one bad thing about these things. And you go on Twitter, and they're national guys tweeting about these uniforms. That's how good looking they are. And if you want to get one, I know Jeff, you're interested. I think it's a little too rich for my blood. I might just have to bide my time. I don't make the money you do, Jeff.
Yeah,
so
Graf,
I'm gonna have to.
Jeff makes that baller status money, so he can definitely is probably the only one out of all three of us to be able to make that.
Those things are sweet.
Maybe I can scrounge up some spare change and put a bid in.
Seriously, I told Troy Dannon that I'm gonna. This has inspired me, and I want to get your thoughts on this at another time because we're at the top of the hour. But I want to do a off-season ranking all the history of Louisiana sports uniforms because I think these are going to rank near the very top. near the very top, the the old New Orleans Jazz uniforms,
correct.
maybe the old Pelicans baseball uniforms. Those were sweet. We may have to do a whole show devoted to great uniform in Louisiana sports history, but these will rank up there. So real quick, Todd, Sunday, tell people how they can tune into the program on Sunday afternoon, Green Wave at Houston.
Yeah, right here on Sports 1280. Pregame will be at 4:30, and tip will be at 5. And interesting, too, Jeff, is that we're playing at Texas Southern. Houston is redoing the old Hawthorne's Pavilion, which they absolutely needed to do because, without question, it's the worst arena in our league. But it's not going to be like that anymore. They're gutting it from the inside like Cincinnati's doing. Same facade, different building inside. So we're actually playing at Texas Southern. But it hasn't seemed to bother Houston at all this year because I don't think they've lost a game at home. So
1 minute.
It's going to be a challenge in an arena I've never been in. So, but again, 4:30 pre, 5 o'clock tip.
All right.
If you're not out and about parading, of course. And if you are, you can listen on iHeart.
Yeah, bring your earbuds. All right, bud. Safe travels, Graf, and we'll talk to you when you get back to town. Hopefully bring home a victory for the Green Wave. Thanks, bud.
Thanks, gentlemen. Happy Mardi Gras.
Happy Mardi Gras to you, too. That's Todd Graffinini, voice the Tulane Green Wave, and always does a great job calling games right here at Sports 1280. And that's going to be it for our first hour, but we'll be back for a second hour. Clyde Verdun and I. No Larry Holder today. Larry's out, but we will soldier on, as always.
Come on back.
Here on TGIF. And look, we got a great second hour. We got Sean Jensen coming up at 11:15.
10 seconds.
And 11:30, Joe Person. So stick with us. Duncan Holder, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We'll be right back.
As a small business owner, you make every dollar count.
That was good.
What could you do with $10?
I was just going to ask about
Go
the
to
American because it's so weird.
today, and you'll get
Well, he started talking about the Mardi Gras. I thought it was perfect
Oh, yeah,
to ask
absolutely.
about that because these things are. I'm going to definitely bid on one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I just can't figure out. I told him they got men's small and men's medium. You know, basketball uniforms fit big.
Yeah, they do.
So I'm wondering. I'm not a big guy, so I'm wondering.
And use promo code 9000.
Small might be.
That's
These are what they're wearing.
Yeah, those are the actual jerseys.
So.
A bath faucet
How could you be a college basketball player and have a small?
Well, you have to also understand, like, a lot of these guys are wearing these jerseys like
widespread
size
bath
small because
faucet
they
in
want them
tungsten
so
bronze
tight.
from the
It's
Home
just-
Depot does exactly that. And it's at a new lower price.
Like,
I have
thinking
to-
about it because it's like having to peel those things off.
Oh, they got one extra large I saw.
Without having to renovate your budget.
Number 25 is
The
extra
Victor
large.
Ladera faucet, now just $109 during the winter kitchen.
I'm
and bath
definitely
event
bidding on
only
one
at
of
the
these
Home
babies.
Depot. More saving, more doing. Valid through
$300
March 2nd
it's
while
nothing.
Yeah, that's nothing.
WODT,
I mean, it's like a one-of-a-kind item.
New Orleans. Listen on the free iHeart.
I mean, I could wear that every Mardi Gras.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could wear it under my Mardi Gras.
I saw
jacket.
one dude in the new Pelicans Mardi Gras jersey yesterday. I was like, it's going to be interesting to see how many of those stuff.
In the wake of the massive trade
this Mardi
deadline
Gras,
roster
Mardi Gras.
overhaul, the Cleveland Cavaliers will be undermanned tonight when they play in Atlanta. New additions Jordan Clarkson, George Hill, and Rodney Hood all are doubtful to suit up alongside LeBron James. Then again, the Hawks are tied for the worst record in the NBA. Another headline game tonight has Detroit and Blake Griffin hosting his former team, the LA Clippers.
Obviously, I know all those guys really well, so I can't say that, it's just another game.
This is what 40 and I always talk
I'm not really
about.
the type of guy to be all buddy-buddy during the game.
I know you're going to.
It's going to be a war.
It
Wait,
should
what?
be
I'm
a
old
war,
school.
and it will be the only time they will face
Nobody
each
in the
other.
NBA wants to criticize
This
anybody.
season, the
It
Winter
drives me
Olympics in
berserk.
Pyeongchang
So
are
Zach
underway
Lowe, who
following an
I have a lot of
opening
respect for,
ceremony
great
Friday
writer.
night,
This is what he
highlighted by
was
South Korean
breaking
gold
down
medal
the
figure skater Yoon
Cavs
Ah
trade
Kim,
yesterday.
riding the
And
Olympic
he writes about
cauldron.
Dwayne Wade.
Minnesota
His
Vikings have a
sentence
new
was
offensive
classic,
coordinator. It's Philadelphia's John T. Filippo.
He doesn't want to criticize anybody. So he writes, Dwayne Wade, this is exactly a quote. Wade shot a lot too. An aging veteran who loafs on defense, jacks with the frequency of a borderline all-star, and scolds others for their mistakes can sap morale. And then this is what kills me because he's got to add in.
Down in our beautifully renovated dining room,
can sap morale, even without really meaning to or acting with malice. So it's his way of saying, I don't want to criticize anybody. I don't want Dwayne Wade to get mad at me, so I'm going to be nice. How do you scold somebody
The Latrobe
by
Corporation
accident?
has grown through people and
basically
their
saying
ideas.
he's a terrible teammate.
It all started in 1949
he didn't mean to be.
invented automatic
That's what I'm
shrimp
saying. That's what goes on.
changed the
It's like
seafood
no one wants to
industry.
say anything.
JM founded the
He
Latrobe
basically just torched him, but he said, well, it's not his fault.
And here's what I would say to what
the people of
I
these
do
companies
agree
have
with
patented
what you're
hundreds
saying,
of new
is that
inventions used around the
I
world.
think the problem
if you have
has
good ideas
become
and want to help create the next
if
Latrim
you
innovation,
have
visit
even
Latrim.com
an
for a
ounce
full
of
listing of
truth
positions.
in what you're reporting, you're
A
going
new
to have
study
nothing
shows
but
a
people come
10%
at you
jump in
and tell you
suicides
that
nationwide
you
in the 4
are
months
being
after
malicious,
Robin Williams died
you are
in
attacking his
2014.
character, you're
Brian
doing
Shuck
all
has
these things,
details.
regardless of whether or
Researchers
not
at Columbia
you
University
have
said
your
the
own
heavy
sources,
media
you have
coverage
facts
of
to
the
prove it,
entertainer's
to
death
back it
almost
up,
certainly played a
because
key role in
you
this
are
fight.
making a
The
valid
team called it a
criticism, which is to say
high-profile
that-
example
and
of how
honestly, it would be
headline-making
the same thing
suicides can
that's why no
result
one
in
really is gonna
copycat
touch
deaths.
LeBron until
They
he's out of
noted
the
more than
NBA.
1,800
But the fact of the matter
suicides
is
in the
that
4 months
you're right,
after
like,
Williams
honestly,
died.
that's a big
That
question.
compares with
Do
the
it, though.
fewer
There's
than
ways to say, like,
1,700 that would be
he
expected.
hasn't
at
been
that
considered
time
a
period.
great
Cavs
Breast cancer
teammates
patients are being
say,
told
or
to eat less
Cavs source,
asparagus.
or,
That's because of a new British
and you
study
put it on
showing
them,
that
but
a
you're still getting it out there. As long as you know it's the
actually
truth,
can
that's
drive
all that
the
should
spread
That's all
of
that matters.
cancer
Yeah.
to other
Only
organs.
I mean, if it's
Scientists
not
at
true,
the
you don't
UK
want to put it out
Cancer
there.
Institute
But if
say
if
when
it's
they
if
reduce
you've got
the
multiple
level of
sources
the
saying
building
that he's
block
doing all
for
this,
proteins
you just got to
found
get
in
the truth out there,
asparagus,
man.
too
Yeah.
much
It's
shred
part of our
in
job.
animals
It's,
with breast
it's no different
cancer.
than politics or
Health
anything
update.
else.
I don't
Sarah
disagree.
McCaskill,
I don't disagree with that at
I
all.
mean,
Pulse
Woj
Radio.
just torched LeBron.
Despite
I
all
mean,
the wild ups
torched
and
him.
downs
Yeah.
on Wall Street
And
this
so,
week,
and I mean,
most
and I think that's
economists
the
are
thing between
sticking with
like
their rosy
guys like
forecast for this
Woj
year.
and guys
The
like Zach
consensus in a new
Lowe,
Wall Street Journal
like all the
poll,
rest of
growth
these guys are
averaging
doing NBA
2.8%
stuff.
for
Is
all of
that
2018.
Woj can get
That's
away with
short
it
of the
because
even rosier
Woj
predictions by the
has
Trump
now
administration of
cemented
3% plus based on
his
the
kind
tax
of
cuts. But
reputation
it's
as a
3/10%
person
better
that
than
is going to
last
break
year,
the news,
and the
is going
economists
to
say
talk
the
about
tax
what he
cuts
wants to
are
talk
part of
about.
the
He
improvement.
doesn't care
They're
whether you
also
like him or
predicting
not
a drop
because
in the
you're
unemployment
not.
rate from the current 4.1%
Whether you're his source or
to
not,
below 4 by the
he's
summer.
still going to be able to do
And
what
they
he
think
does.
it's
Like
likely
no one's
that
going to
Fed will raise
boycott Woj.
short-term
Like
interest
Woj is
rates
still going to
mean,
get his
but that's how
dividends.
you have.
in March
I
and
just
again
think
in June,
you have to be that
which
way
should
anyway.
quell
You
inflation
can't.
fears.
I mean, there's
The
you
new
don't have to be
space
a
race is
jerk.
well
You
underway
just got to
with this
report the
week's
truth.
successful launch
And
of
if somebody gets
SpaceX
mad at you,
Falcon
they get
heavy
mad at
launch
you.
at
You can't be in their
powerful rocket,
pocket
putting owner Elon
because
Musk's personal
they might get
Tesla
mad at you.
Roadster
I mean,
into orbit. But the race is
that's
not
just-
between countries
that's-
anymore, but
I don't
private
know.
companies.
Musk isn't the only billionaire in the new commercial space launch race. Amazon.com founder Jeff Bezos has Blue Origin. Both are competing to launch satellites, secret military cargo, even astronauts, perhaps within a year. While Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic continues to promise a space-like zero-G experience for tourists.
Real news.
NASA would like to eventually have an outpost on the moon. You can envision supply runs.
There are
being made
ways
by
of
these
being
commercial
able to
companies
write
at a
it
much lower
without
cost
being kind
than
of
NASA
incendiary or
flying its heavy lift
inflammatory,
rocket.
The last
and being
space
able
race
to
ended
write the
with the
truth. And I
Apollo
think that's the
missions
thing
to the
too, is that
moon
we've
in
gotten away from
1973.
NBC's Tom
partially
Costello
being
reporting
able to
with former
actually
astronaut
report
and
the
planetary
news,
scientist
actually
Tom
report
Jones.
truth and facts
And
without
Taco Bell and
maybe
Kentucky
adding-
Fried Chicken now deliver.
maybe adding a
Their
heavier
parent company Young
tone to
Brands
it
is
than what you
partnering
need.
with
To
delivery
say that
company Grubhub.
LeBron,
It's a
that
joint
Dwayne
marketing and
Wade
operations
was
agreement
not viewed
that
by
will
his
expand
teammates,
delivery of
according to
Taco Bell
some
and
in the
KFC
Cavaliers
products beyond
organization,
test markets
as one of
to
the
about
better teammates
80% of
because
their
of
markets
blah,
by
blah,
the
whatever.
end of
It's
this
like,
year.
okay, we're
McDonald's
getting that
has been
out, and you're
offering
not saying that
delivery
he's just
since
their
last
person.
April,
You're saying,
and
hey,
it says
look,
it was the
these
biggest
guys didn't like
single
playing
driver
with
of
I mean, they
major market
dealt
sales.
him like
Yeah, they dealt him for a
less
reason.
than a few months after they got
Yeah,
him.
and what's
Joe
crazy about
McConnell,
that too is like
NBC
seeing
News
Gabrielle
Radio.
Union and stuff
30
like
seconds.
All right, bud.
What's my schedule looking like?
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an emergency flash flood between Park and First Street.
What? No, no, that doesn't work. I'm busy then. Decline. Decline.
Floods don't exactly work around your schedule. Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. It starts with talking to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. So don't wait, communicate. Visit getagameplan.org. Brought to you by the Louisiana Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, FEMA, and the Ad Council.
Duncan Holder, back at you on Friday, February 9th. A very mild, beautiful day in New Orleans. And Jeff Duncan, along with Claude Verdun and David DeCorbier. We have no Larry Holder with us today. He's out sick. We're wishing him the best during this Mardi Gras weekend and wishing everybody out there a happy Mardi Gras as we turn into the big weekend of parades coming up as we try to get to Fat Tuesday next week. And have you got your Mardi Gras outfit, by the way, Clyde?
I don't.
Do you wear a Mardi Gras outfit?
I don't really wear a Mardi Gras outfit. I mean, trust me. I think there's more than enough people out here who are wearing enough wigs and skirts or whatever those skirts are and things like that. I think there's more than enough people out here wearing that. And I can tell you right now, for my money, and this is not a shot across the bow at anyone, but if you do this, you know who you are. Gentlemen, if you are going to go to Mardi Gras, I have no problem with great outfits.
No, I think we got a rant coming.
No, we don't have a rant coming.
Soapbox time.
No. Don't play my music.
Shot across
You'll
the
know
bow.
when it's a good rant. I'm just saying, if you are going to wear like these tight gold style, like really high riding, like skin tight pants, please don't. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. Like,
what happened to you? You saw something you shouldn't have seen?
Yes, I felt like I did. There was one guy who was walking with I think it was either one of the walking crews or it was just walking along the parade route. But he was in like these gold sequin, tight, almost like wrestling style pants. But like,
that sounds pretty cool to me.
It wasn't cool to look at. That's just
you don't have to look there.
I wasn't trying to look there.
A lot of eye averting during Mardi Gras.
I'm literally going down to try to pick up a doubloon that had gotten thrown our way, and then all of a sudden I just get that in my, and I'm like, nah, bruh, no, please, something else, anything but that. That's all I'm saying, gentlemen. Even if you have the body for it, please don't do it.
All right, that's our Duncan Holder Mardi Gras rant of the day from Clyde Verdun, who obviously has been out on the parade route way too long.
And I'm going to do it again for like 4 or 5 more hours today. So I'm hoping that's the only thing I don't want to see. Other than that, everybody's in attendance. I mean, I'm not putting on a wig. I mean, I don't know what other kind of outfit I get, but that's the only thing that for me is a no-go.
Maybe you need some Mardi Gras blinders. I'm going to go out. Maybe I'll go out to the fairgrounds today and get you some blinders.
Yeah, and then figure out like how horses that ride in the parade don't have those things that because literally let's just say
we need something
let's
just
say that one of the horses in the parade left us a nice present that was there for about 6 hours.
They're horses.
I know they're horses, man, but
it's
like
nature.
It wasn't until like another group came back, scooped it up, and they tried putting water on it. It just made it worse, and the wind was coming towards us. It just
at least we weren't like Philadelphia fans who
it's true.
I don't want to go there.
Yeah, that did other things to it.
By the way, that parade yesterday in Philadelphia, I don't know if you saw any of that. Pretty epic.
It was.
The rant, who was that went on the rant? Kelsey?
That was, Jason Kelsey, yes.
Unbelievable. And he had almost a Mardi Gras-like outfit on.
Yeah,
what
it was very festive. I don't think he talked about what it was, but I think it was very, very, very festive.
And it was very cool. He mentioned Malcolm Jenkins. He mentioned, there's a lot of Louisiana ties on that Philadelphia Eagles team. Jalen Mills, Jenkins, obviously Darren Sproles. And I've got a column this weekend that's going to touch on the Louisiana connection with Doug Peterson. And amazingly, I don't know if you know this or not, Clyde. You probably don't, because you probably weren't even born when this happened. But my first year in sports journalism as a full-time journalist was in 1989. I was blessed to get a full-time job at the Monroe News-Star and cover Eddie Robinson, covered Grambling State University, the legendary coach of Grambling, one of the coaching icons in our business, and one of the few people I've ever truly kind of been in awe of. He was such a nice gentleman. He immediately, made you feel at ease around him. But he was just an awesome person. And so I got to cover Coach Rob for a year at Grambling State and Louisiana Tech, which was, of course, in the coverage area of the Monroe News-Star. And then a year later, they asked me to cover the hometown team, Northeast Louisiana at the time, which is now UL Monroe. And the quarterback was Doug Peterson. Unbelievable that now he is a Super Bowl winning head coach. And I'm trying to find out, I'm talking to some of my sources and some of the sports historians in the area to find out, is he the first, say, Louisiana product to win a Super Bowl as a head coach? I think he might be. Maybe people would know better if anybody wants to call in and correct me. I think because he went to Northeast Louisiana, he counts as a Louisiana product. I don't think we've ever had one in this state, but he still keeps a home in Monroe. His son is a redshirt freshman tight end for UL Monroe, Josh Peterson.
He coached high school at
Calvary Baptist in Shreveport. That's where he started his coaching career. Mm-hmm. And his niece is a softball player at UL Monroe. His wife is Jeannie is from Monroe. So they have incredible connections to North Louisiana. And the great thing about Doug Peterson, if you listen to anybody talk about him, is he's down to earth. He's one of the most down to earth guys you can ever meet. And, he's kept his connections to his early part of his career, the people that were behind him all the way back to Shreveport and Calvary Baptist. He's not big-timed anybody along the way.
I watched his daughter play softball like 5 times over the course of the last 2 years. I had no idea. That's crazy.
Yes. Well, it's actually his niece.
His niece.
His niece, yeah. His brother, Craig Peterson, played at Northeast Louisiana. Anyway, I have a column, a little tease there about Doug Peterson's connections and ongoing connection to the state of Louisiana. And I know people know about that, but I get in a little bit greater detail. And my lingering, lasting memory of Peterson as a player, I only have one, and I remember covering a game late in that year, his senior year, and he threw a wheel route, like a 66-yard touchdown pass to Cisco Richard. He was the great running back for NLU at that time. And they beat North Texas on the road and won the Southland Conference Championship. They went to the 1AA playoffs. Yep. And I remember flying. This is my second year as a sports writer, so I was excited. They draw the playoffs, and the 1AA playoffs are awesome because you get all these regional games against teams that you don't normally play.
Absolutely.
I say you, the team you cover, and they drew Nevada Reno.
Yeah, they were also Division 1AA FCS now, yeah.
And so next thing I know, like a week later, I'm flying out to Reno, Nevada. I have no idea where I'm going. I don't know anything about this team.
The biggest little city in the world, man.
Yeah, and they got trucked pretty well out there. That's a tough place to play, but that was Doug Peterson's last game. And look, he was a great college quarterback, but I never thought he was going to play 12 years in the NFL, much less become a Super Bowl winning head coach. I never envisioned that. But that was back in a different time when you didn't have the Todd McShays of the world and the saturation coverage.
McShays and Mel Kiper. Well, I guess Mel Kiper was around at that point because, he was doing draft kind of stuff then too. But, yeah, you're right. Now it's a whole kind of sausage factory of prospects and projecting forward and who's going to be this and who's going to be that. And I think it goes back to a lot of what we talked about yesterday with, recruiting and 5 stars and rankings and how all of these things are now tied into whether or not you're successful. And really, honestly, it's a shell game because there's never really any hardcore quantifiable way to discern whether or not, if you have the number 1 class in 2018, whether you will have a national championship by the time 2022 comes around or 2021 comes around. That's just not how it works. There are so many other aspects that go into it. But to your point too, which I was reading something yesterday, I think it was on Deadspin, because I guess Mike Lombardi might have, I think he went on the Rich Eisen show. I think this was a ways back and was, I guess, not very complimentary of Doug Peterson.
Correct. And he was unqualified.
He was unqualified. And it really kind of, I guess the thing about it that struck me the most was the idea that, especially now in this iteration of the NFL, you're looking at guys like Sean McVay. He had a pretty decent career in the NFL, not by superstar standards, but you're looking at all these guys that are now going into management and or coaching. You can talk about John Lynch with the 49ers. Honestly, how they were able to get Jimmy Garoppolo in their lap for almost nothing, and now they're about to give him the highest, one of the highest salaries in NFL
history. It is the highest. Average per year, yeah.
What he'll probably be able to do in San Francisco, and all these guys that are now going into either coaching or management. And we talked about the generational shift in the NBA. I think we're starting to see that generational shift in the NFL now, where you're having guys like Sean McVay, Doug Peterson, these kind of guys.
Vrabel,
who are going to be really the next water carriers for the league going into the next really 7, 8, 9, almost 10 years. And with Peterson already being able to win a Super Bowl after leaving, Kansas City a few years ago?
This is his second year as head coach.
That's amazing to me because the NFL almost seems like that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I tell you, he embraced a lot of the tenets that the Eagles organization has pioneered. They're very big into analytics. And there was a great story in the New York Times last week leading up to the Super Bowl about this analytics company. It's actually based in Louisville, my hometown, that Philadelphia, and I think the Saints are a client as well. I'm going to try and find out a little more about this, but they do a lot of probability number crunching. And one of the things that they're very high on is going for it on 4th down.
Right.
And it played out perfectly in the Super Bowl where Doug Peterson went twice. And I think we're seeing these new coaches like Doug Peterson that are not as risk-averse as some of the old school guys.
Right.
And I think we're going to see more and more of that. The Sean McVays. I don't know what Vrabel will be like. Sean Payton's certainly in that boat.
Yeah, he is. I mean, honestly, you can almost talk about. I mean, that's not necessarily with like obviously the way the challenge rules have kind of shifted over the course of the last, 5-6 years. But you're right. Like he was one of the ones where it's oh my goodness, he's a riverboat gambler. He's going to go for it on 4th down. And honestly, what you were probably seeing more than anything is you were seeing the shifting of philosophies from never ever ever under any circumstances unless the perceived odds are in your favor on going for it on 4th down to absolutely saying, no, we got something here. We're definitely going for it on 4th down.
I agree. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to visit with Sean Jensen up in Minneapolis. We'll ask him a little bit about how the Super Bowl went up in Minneapolis. Also want to talk to him about Thomas Morstead, that great story about Thomas Morstead and his foundation, What You Give Will Grow, and also about his line of children's books. If you're a parent out there and your kids wanting to get involved in sports, Sean's got a great line of children's books dedicated to sports and how parents can use sports to help raise their kids. I think it's a really cool concept. We'll talk to Sean about that after we come back from this break. This is Duncan Holder, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. Stay with us.
Hi, Eric Asher, host of Inside New Orleans. Been in the business now for 16 years, talking sports, politics, and news. Talking everything New Orleans, everything Louisiana. Looking forward to joining the crew, as we'll tell it like it is each and every day.
E-Money, Eric.
Days, noon to 2. Sports
and politics, they go together.
Strong opinion each and every day.
He was on a meltdown the other day about the Smoothie King Center.
In the heart of Mid-City.
Oh, my
where
God.
It's always been.
Eric was like, it was like our leadership in this city. I'm telling you, people, where all the gains we've made post-Katrina. I was like,
old-style New Orleans.
Eric, it's a leak in the roof.
It's a leak in the roof.
It's not that big a deal. There's no crisis
some
here.
of the best seafood
I love Eric. If you have a leak in the roof in your house, we got to tear this whole thing down.
Always the best.
10 years,
always
15 years, not long enough.
Kylie Jenner and her new baby taking Instagram by storm. A pic of baby Stormy and her reality TV star mom. Now the most liked photo on the platform, knocking down to second place Beyonce and her twins.
I can't listen to this. I can't do it.
Oprah Winfrey once again insisting that she won't be making a run for the White House. Speculation about an Oprah Winfrey candidacy took off after her powerful speech.
All right, we got Sean.
All right, buddy.
Golden Globe Awards. She was interviewed by Hamilton's Lin-Manuel Miranda for her Oprah Super Soul Conversation series on OWN at New York's Apollo Theater. That's when Winfrey again knocked down the rumors. Miranda was talking about his social media clout, joking, "I'm not running for public office."
Are you saying Eric's just a little bit of an alarmist?
No,
a tad.
Yeah, just a really short fuse from him to the nuclear bomb button.
Well, I think his tagline says it all. From the dog catcher to the governor, they all got to go.
Unbelievable.
I love
this season's prize money. She said if she's learned anything from her stint in politics, it's that you have to watch her back.
If you wanna be my lover.
The Spice Girls are hitting the road
go,
for a reunion
Clyde.
tour. TMZ reports the British pop group is in talks
Friendship
with their
never
former manager about a
ends.
world trek that will kick off this summer in the UK and in the US. There are no plans for them to record any new music. The group's last
Good,
release
it'd probably
was
be
in
terrible
2000,
anyway.
and their last performance at
That'd be
the
something too,
2012
about the
Summer
new
Olympics.
British
That's
Revolution in the
entertainment. Jennifer
late
Wilson,
90s, early
NBC News Radio.
2000s.
It's important to buckle up your kids.
I know.
Sometimes car seats can be complicated.
I know.
And if your child's in the wrong seat and you get into a crash,
I know.
it could lead to a serious injury.
I know.
So you're 100% sure you have the right car seat for your child's age and size?
I don't know.
Don't think you know. Know you know. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Make sure you have the...
All right, coming back.
All right, bud.
Safercar.gov/the right seat. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is Duncan Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back. Jeff Duncan, Clyde Verdun, David DeCorbier on Friday. Does this even have a name? Is it a Mardi Gras Friday? What do we call this? I'm failing.
Well, we can't. Well, we're not going to call it that because we don't fail at anything. We actually do quality work here. I don't care what anybody says.
All right. Well,
I would say this is the precursor to Fat Tuesday Friday.
Fat Friday?
Fat Friday. Let's do that. Fat Friday. I like that.
Country
Fried Fat Friday.
Country Fried Fat Friday. That's impossible to say.
I know, and we just came up with it.
But what is not impossible to say is Sean Jensen, old friend of mine and Larry. Unfortunately, Larry's not with us today to visit with Sean, but I didn't get a chance to see Sean up in Minneapolis. Sean, I know you were probably at all the hot parties in Minneapolis for Super Bowl, but the question I have, did you get to go to one of those cool, like, ice sculpture parties? I heard there were some really cool ones up in Minneapolis for the Super Bowl. Did you get to go to any of those VIP events?
Well, I don't know why I would want to go to one of those when I live here, year round. So I did go to a couple cool parties, which were fun, and probably my favorite, just because I had no idea what to expect at it, was the commissioner's party, which is Friday night.
Right.
So I went to that, and I heard, they said there was entertainment, but didn't say who, and my wife and I walked in a little bit late and was hearing that song, I'm Only One Call Away, by Charlie Puth, because my kids loved the song, and I just assumed it was like a DJ, and then I was peeking around the corner, and there's a guy on stage singing, and I was like, oh, maybe it's like a cover band or something, and then I was standing next to someone, I was like, hey, is that the actual guy? And they're like, yeah, that's him. So he was performing initially. Then there was he did like 4 songs, and there was a break for about a half hour. And then Demi Lovato comes on and sings like a full set. So that was kind of cool. I can't say I'm a huge fan of either of those performers, but certainly I'm familiar with their music, and it was nice. So that was probably my most fun party that I went to all week. So.
Yeah, it was a great time up there. It was a little cold for me. My blood's gotten a little thin, but Minneapolis, I got to tell you, Sean, they did a yeoman's job on the event itself. I mean, it was really well planned out, as you would expect from Minnesotans. They're incredibly efficient, hardworking people as a group. I mean, it's amazing the number of volunteers, and not only just the number, but how in tune everybody was to what they were supposed to be doing up there. And I know you've been in Minneapolis for a while. How did you think the whole Super Bowl went off overall?
Well, I've been to a bunch. I believe that was my 15th Super Bowl. I mean, obviously 14 of those were as a reporter. But just having experienced it and having been to a few Olympics, typically those major events just wreak havoc, on the community, especially like traffic and things. But I think partly because we do have, 2 major cities, obviously the Twin Cities, it does kind of spread things out a little bit. And, my kids, their school is about 14 miles from my house, and my commute in the morning and picking them up really was not affected. And even when I went down for festivities, downtown, like the NFL experience, when I took my kids, my commute time downtown wasn't that hard. And every single time, even for the commissioner's party, I found street parking for like $2. So instead of paying a fortune for parking, and instead of sitting in gridlock traffic, I really didn't experience that much. And of course, I kind of know the roads and where to go and where not to go. But even so, typically it's not going to matter. I lived in Chicago for a few years when I worked at the Chicago Sun-Times, and there's no shortcuts. When there's traffic, there's traffic. And when you're during the week at about 2:45, there's going to be gridlock everywhere. That's just how it is. And then it really doesn't let up till about 7:30. Wow. And so for that 5-hour window, there's no magic potion other than riding like the train, to get around that. And so I thought that was really cool for our community to, be able to sort of absorb all those people. I agree with you. I feel like the volunteers were super friendly and informed. I remember when I went to the Olympics in Athens, I mean, the people couldn't have been nicer. The volunteers were like some of the nicest people in the world, but they never knew anything.
Right.
That's
common
they
lots of times.
They were supposed to know, they didn't know.
Right.
And so, no offense, but that's not very useful, right? When you're not somewhere that you're familiar and you're trying to get directions somewhere, you want the information more than you want somebody who's going to smile and nod their head at you. And so I feel like the volunteers that were here, we're really friendly and informed. And, this has become home for me. I'm not from Minnesota, right? I came here to work and cover the Vikings, but it's become home partly for all those reasons.
We're talking to Sean Jensen. Sean was a longtime NFL beat reporter, worked at a number of stops along the way, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, the St. Paul Pioneer Press, the Sun-Times in Chicago, and then got smart and got out of our business, which unfortunately a lot of people are doing. But I want you to tell our listeners about what you're doing now, because I think it's really cool. It's a great concept. You've got a line of children's books, middle school rules, and tell people how they maybe can get a hold of your books and also the thought process behind this series that you've launched.
Well, Jeff, you were one of my friends in the business, and what I got into the business for as a kid, was I wanted to be around sports, and what I was drawn to was just storytelling. I thought it was so cool to be able to, find a player, that new emergent player that nobody knows, and be able to be one of the first people to tell that person's story.
Yep.
That's what I loved about the business, is being able to sort of share the stories of who these amazing people are. And I think so much attention is given to the guys who, get in trouble, to the guys who are the loudest one to speak. But I find that I was drawn to those folks who are just good people who are living out a dream. And it so happens that dream is very public, right? But maybe they got into it because they loved the sport. They didn't get into it for the money. They didn't get into it for, the fame and all those things. And so those were the kind of stories that I really, really enjoyed telling. And what I found was that once I had my son, Elijah, who's now 10 years old, he loves sports too. And I wanted him, he wanted to become a professional athlete, and I wanted him to know how hard it is to become a pro athlete, and then how much sacrifice it takes, how much struggle it takes. And you and I know that, because all these athletes that we cover, they've gone through those things. It's not just about making a ton of money and blinking your eyes and saying, hey, I want to be a pro athlete. We understand how hard it is to do that. And so what I saw was an opportunity to focus on those defining years, when these athletes were kids, not when they were famous, not when people knew who Drew Brees was, right? But before anybody knew the name Drew Brees, when he was just a little boy growing up in Texas, who had this big dream and decided to pursue it. And all the struggles that he went through with his family, all the struggles he went through on the field, all the doubters, all the haters, all the people who questioned him, all those things that helped him to persevere and become the man he is today. And so I really wanted to sort of focus on those years. And so that's kind of where my book series was born, is that I wanted to tell the stories of these athletes before anybody knew them. And so my stories focus on their entire childhood and end after they finish high school. So I don't get into what they do in college or the pros. I focus on their childhood. And it's been a lot of fun to do. I don't want you or people to misunderstand, it's a successful series, but it's growing. It's a new thing. It just came out a couple years ago, and the word is out, but it's not like I'm making the kind of money that I made, as a sports writer, and so it's sort of taking a step back financially, but professionally it's been awesome. I absolutely love doing it. It's been a privilege to work with the 4 athletes I've done books with so far. Brian Urlacher, who was my first athlete, just got, inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it's just so cool because Brian was that kid who grew up in a little town, single mom, with his 2 siblings, and he was not the best athlete. He just loved football and he loved basketball, and he stuck with those things, and he found the right coaches and the right teachers who encouraged him to keep pushing himself. And lo and behold, by his sophomore year in high school, physically, he started to really develop. And because he had the right sort of internal things, and because he had the right attitude and the right mindset, then it all started to take fold. And then by his senior year, he's like the best, athlete, football player in the state. But guess what? He only got 1 scholarship offer.
That's amazing.
That's so cool that this guy who's going into the Hall of Fame, he had 1 major Division I scholarship offer. And so it's fun to be able to tell stories like that. And when he and we were on a golf course a couple of years ago after he was retired, and he's like, Sean, I can't believe my life. It's incredible. You know, he thought he was just going to go work in the oil field in Lovington, Texas, or New Mexico, like so many other people in town. He did not think that football would take him this far. And here he is, financially successful, and now going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame as one of the greatest players in football history. And you know, it just absolutely blows his mind.
And people can get their hands, if you go online, it's middleschoolrules.com. You also have books in the series on a Louisiana connection here, Charles Peanut Tillman. Of course, he played at Louisiana Lafayette. Skylar Diggins, former Notre Dame basketball star. And Jamal Charles, of course, the great running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, Denver Broncos. You can get online, check out the series. It's a great idea. But before we let you go, though, I want to get your thoughts, and I also want to plug this story you did on Thomas Morstead, because I covered a lot of that, but it fits right in line with your series of books, I think, going kind of beyond the playing field. And what impressed you about that storyline that Thomas Morstead had with his foundation, and also why you think it connected and resonated so much with the people of Minneapolis and the Vikings?
Well, I think first and foremost, Jeff, is like, you know, it's just kind of where my passion is right now. I mean, I still love football. I still love a lot of things. But, you know, I'm a dad to a 10-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl. And I'm just constantly looking for ways. How do I show them with examples of the kind of character I want them to be? You know, the integrity that I want them to have. You know, and so I'm just constantly looking for people who are good examples because, frankly, in this day and age, they're harder to find. You know, I feel like it's such, you know, it's different to me. You know, I feel as a 41-year-old man that, you know, the standards and the values of people is not the same as when I grew up, you know, in the mid to late 80s. You know, I just feel like it's different. And so to me, somebody like Thomas stands out because here's a guy who's purely doing things for the right reasons. You know, he and his wife created their foundation to help people, you know, and so when he did that simple act, of course, he's as disappointed as everybody else about the Minneapolis Miracle, and yet he was the first player out there, you know, to go through the formality, the extra point that it didn't even matter, right, because the game was already decided, but he was the first guy out there, and so I just wondered, why? What in his history allowed him that he was the first player out there? And so I wanted to ask him that question, and I was able to, you know, through other people, as you know, we're very resourceful as reporters, right, Jeff?
Right.
But I was able to get in touch with somebody who could get me in touch with Thomas, and we were supposed to meet in person while he was here, but we just couldn't coordinate our schedules. And then we talked on the phone Saturday, and we must have talked for at least an hour. I mean, he and I just really, really clicked and had a wonderful conversation. I think he's just a really stand-up person. And he went on to tell me, you know, the why of why he was out there. And it was because of how he was raised. It was the expectation of how his parents just, you know, they expect you to do the right thing, not because it's easy, but because it's the right thing to do. And so he was out there because it was the right thing to do, even though he was disappointed as everybody else. And so, you know, I felt like that was a great illustration for kids to be able to see. And then sometimes there are kind of what I call hidden blessings, right? And obviously he would rather have played. He says in my stories, I wish I was in Minneapolis to play in the Super Bowl with the Saints. Of course, he's a competitor. But the hidden blessing in all this is he wasn't, and he was still able to do something that helps. And, you know, all that money he raised, it's incredible. And that's going to help kids here in Minnesota, which is not something that you would have expected, right, for a guy whose foundation is really rooted in Louisiana. So I think it's really kind of a great story.
No doubt about it. And that's Sean Jensen, author and founder of Middle School Rules. Check it out. Tell people real quick again how they can get their hands on those books and how they can follow you if they want to get in touch with you about future books.
Yeah, I'm on social media pretty well. So at Twitter, I'm at Sean K. Jensen. And Middle School Rules, you can find out information with the website, middleschoolrules.com, or just simply Google search it, and a ton of things will come up. You know, and I'd love, obviously, to talk about the series. And as you know, I'm very engaging on social media, so people have questions, they can easily just at me at Twitter. I'm not one of those people who say, hey, don't at me. I don't mind.
No, you've never been like that. You've never been like that. And it's at Sean K. Jensen, Jensen. Sean, thanks for joining us, bud. It's great to hear from you. Sorry I missed you up in Minneapolis, but best of luck with the series. I think it's an awesome idea, and I hope a lot of people out there jump on board because it's something I think more parents could use, using sports and these great stories to help their parenting. We all need help somewhere along the line in parenting, right?
I agree. Well, I want to say one last thing, Jeff, and I've told you this before, but New Orleans is absolutely my favorite number one NFL city. That was my favorite place to go. I have so many favorite restaurants there and hotels and, places to hang out. And so, you mentioned you missed me here in the Twin Cities, and hopefully I'll be down there sooner than later, and we can catch up for a beer or something, all right?
Yeah, I would love to do that. We can reminisce about our trip to Beijing for the Olympics in 2008. Wow. That was an all-timer. All right, thanks, Sean. Appreciate it, buddy.
Take care, guys.
All right, that's Sean Jensen, author of Middle School Rules. We're going to take a break, come back, and we are overdue to get to Joe Person over in Charlotte, North Carolina. Visit with Joe, talk some Panthers football and NFC South Division. You listen to Dunc and Holder, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. Stay with us.
Your forecast on Sports
I ended up
New Orleans.
running into Sean. I'm in Beijing. I'll never forget this. Get to the airport. I'm in China. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Naturally,
totally foreign environment.
Like what?
And I get on the media shuttle bus, and there's Sean. Like the first person I see is somebody I know, an NFL guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank God. And we were both completely clueless. But Sean is Korean,
right?
So I'm like, oh, well, maybe he knows about China just because he's
naturally,
Asian.
yeah,
like an idiot.
The first Asian person being like, what? What?
He's like, I don't know anything going on over here. I've never been to China.
I haven't been here either, dude.
Yeah. It's like I'm completely foreign.
I'm sure he's just like, hey, I see a KFC at McDonald's.
It's like I was born and raised in Virginia. I don't know anything about this. It's hilarious.
Unlike most things, there is a way to lower what you pay for car insurance. Call 50.
Yeah, we got to get a hold of
or go online
Joe.
to
I hope we didn't go too far over.
And you can start saving
kind of screwed that up.
When the Cavaliers play the Hawks
exactly.
in Atlanta tonight,
well, he's very thorough, and I think it was still a good interview, though. So
yeah, he's a good guy. He really is. I admire what he's doing. It's not easy.
With 3 others and a first-round pick in 3 transactions. In return, they get Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance, Rodney Hood, and George Hill. Quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo has reportedly agreed to a 5-year deal with the Niners worth $137.5 million. Indianapolis, according to reports, has asked permission to interview Bills defensive coordinator Leslie Frazier for their vacant head coaching job. The Vikings will hire Eagles quarterbacks coach John DeFilippo.
All right, we got Joe, and I think he said he's on a little bit of a time schedule.
Yeah,
so let's
do it short.
Yeah, yeah.
Williams making some halftime adjustments.
It wasn't a tactical change. It's something we preach all the time at a halftime. We talked about defending, rebounding, and playing with a great deal of effort. That's the 3 things we push.
With a win, Carolina improves to 7-5 in the ACC. The Blue Devils are 7-4. That's sports. Frank Arity, NBC News Radio.
Going deep on the teams you care about. Sports 1280 New Orleans.
This is what a woman loves.
Welcome back, Dunc and Holder on a Friday. We've got about 20 minutes left. Jeff Duncan and Clyde Burdan. Pleased to be joined by one of our favorite people in the business, Joe Person of the Charlotte Observer, who I saw just a week ago. We were freezing our tails off up in Minneapolis, Minnesota at Super Bowl 52. Joe, I know you've been busy. Man, your beat could not get crazier. If you come up for air, this Marty Herney story is kind of crazy right now.
You know what, Jeff? It is like 3 major stories going on all at one time. There are side-by-side investigations, NFL investigations going on, one with the owner of the team, one involving, as you said, the interim general manager, the assumed full-time, soon-to-be full-time general manager, Marty Herney. Those 2 things are going on. And, they're about to complete like a $2.5 billion sale probably within the next month or 2. So other than that, it's just been easy living in the Queen City of Charlotte.
Yeah, I love how people, and I'm sure you get this all the time from fans or readers that say, "Oh, what do you do in the off season?" I mean, when football season's over, right? Yeah, you're just kicking it up, right?
Exactly.
Well, can you?
It's been nuts, man. I mean, this stuff with Herney. I don't know how much you guys have read up on it, but he has been involved in a very, very contentious divorce. You know, they were divorced 4 years ago, I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago. But there have continued to be like back and forth alimony and child support filings in the case, and then his ex really dropped the big one on him right in the midst, as I said, when he was, by all accounts, was about on the verge of being named the full-time general manager again. She put out these allegations, took him to a district judge here in Charlotte a week ago, and the judge refused to put out to grant a temporary restraining order. He did not find cause that Marty had any kind of domestic violence involved with his ex, but and she's since withdrawn the complaint. But the NFL today, the latest up to the minute today, Elisa Friel, who you guys know, Goodell hired back about 4 years ago to help on all these domestic violence situations. She's in town meeting with Marty Herney and his attorney. She met with the Panthers reportedly yesterday. So they did fast track this. The NFL seems to appreciate that there's a timing, because there's three guys who interviewed for this job last week, 3 minority candidates, as it turns out, who are just sort of waiting in limbo to hear what's going on.
Talking to Joe Person, Panthers beat writer for the Charlotte Observer. And Joe, can you give us an update on the ownership situation? Have there been like groups step forward that have been identified? Is it to that point yet, or are we still kind of waiting and wondering?
Only 1 or 2 locally have been, Jeff. The one involves kind of a NASCAR contingent here, Bruton and his son Marcus Smith, who own the Charlotte Motor Speedway. They are linked to a gentleman named Felix Sabates, who has a piece of a NASCAR team. He has a piece of the Charlotte Hornets. They are really the only group that's been identified. There is very high and confirms reports that some of the limited partners, Jerry Richardson's group of limited partners, want to make a run at this team. I'm feeling more and more like that might be the case. Some of these guys, one of them founded and cashed out on Family Dollar years ago, so he's got the liquid cash to write the check. Now they would have to go get a couple more partners, obviously, because they're going to lose Jerry's 48% of it. But no, there's not been, just to answer your question, there's not been a ton of identification of these groups coming forward. But it wouldn't surprise me, knowing Richardson's kind of affinity for the Carolinas and just sort of for lack of a better expression, kind of the good old boy network here in Charlotte. It wouldn't surprise me if it was that sort of a handoff to some of his cronies already who have a piece of the team.
Yeah, and to add to, I guess, the craziness, Ron Rivera has really shaken up his coaching staff as if you didn't have enough things to cover. You had a lot of comings and going. Did much of that take you by surprise? Did you expect him to overhaul his staff as much as he did?
Not really. And the defensive coordinator position, came open because Steve Wilkes became a head coach. So it wasn't like he was shaking that piece of it up. But certainly, I think all of us who covered this team knew that things had gotten stale with Mike Shula, and particularly his relationship with Cam Newton. I think they felt like, I'm just not sure the message was getting, across to Cam that he had gone backwards the last 2 years under Shula, and that doesn't all fall on Mike or quarterbacks coach Ken Dorsey, who also got canned. A lot. You got to certainly Cam in year number 7 needs to take some of this responsibility himself. But it wasn't working. he was, you look at his numbers, even the eyeball test on Sunday afternoon, Cam was certainly taking backward steps from that 2015 MVP season. They had to change it up. They do. They go get North Turner and his son Scott Turner, and these are two guys that Ron Rivera is very comfortable and familiar with. Of course, Rivera with Norv out in San Diego. Norv has a strong history of working with quarterbacks, and I also don't know he's going to. I don't know he's going to be as soft or kind of take crap from Cam like maybe Shula was willing to do at times. And so we'll see. We'll see if a little tough love might be kind of a good rejuvenation for Cam going into year 8.
Joe, has that been one of the things, the biggest things about kind of this Carolina team? Because, I mean, we're still talking about a team that was able to make the playoffs in a really challenging division in the NFC South. With all the talk that's kind of been going on off the field, has there been much kind of as much coverage about what the team needs to do in the offseason to really kind of maybe have a stronger squad to make a push in the NFC South, knowing how it seems like every year the best team one year is not the best team next year, and you have a really chance to strike while the iron's hot?
Yeah, it does feel like football for sure is taking a back seat to these bigger picture stories. But I wrote a number of those stories last week in Minneapolis, and one to your point about what this team might need. I think they need to shake up their wide receiver core. It's they started that process in trading Kelvin Benjamin. And it looked like for the first month after that Halloween night deal that Devin Funchess might blossom as a number one receiver. But the last half of the season, and Jeff saw Devin down in the playoffs. I mean, he's kind of like a Kelvin Benjamin clone. I mean, he's fine on some routes and maybe some jump balls, but he's not a number one receiver. He's not anyone the teams have to go crazy game planning against. I wrote a story last week in the context of what the Eagles did last offseason, where they did this same thing. They went out and signed Alshon Jeffrey. They signed Torrey Smith. They eventually traded Jordan Matthews to the Bills, opening up a spot in the slot for Nelson Aguilar, and they were terrific. I mean, it was a dynamic receiving group. Gave Carson Wentz feel like Jeffrey and Torrey Smith really opened up the field for Carson, and I think that's what the Panthers need. I'm not just saying one guy. I think they need to sign a receiver in free agency, whether it's someone like Marcus Lee, Sammy Watkins, Allen Robinson, kind of the names, kind of the names you hear a lot. And I think they need to draft one too. I mean, you've got a small. The window of Cam Newton every year gets a little smaller, and really since they cut Steve Smith 5 years ago, Cam has not been surrounded by a bunch of all-pro receivers, and I think it's time to make a commitment there for the Carolina Panthers.
And, of course, before they go and do that, they got to get a general manager and an owner. That's all. So, Joe Person.
That's all.
Charlotte Observer, Joe.
They've got the offensive coordinator hired. Now the other pieces. Now maybe the other pieces will fall into play, like a GM and an owner.
Yeah, just some small additions that you have to work on this offseason. Joe, thanks for visiting with us, bud. I know you're busy, as you laid out very eloquently for us. And have a great weekend if you can, and get some rest.
Hey, you guys do the same. Thanks, bud.
All right, thanks. That's Joe Person from the Charlotte Observer. Does a great job covering the Panthers for them. And, man, sometimes you think things are going crazy on your own team, and then you get a little perspective there.
And I wasn't able to ask, but I could have sworn I saw a story last week about how Jerry Richardson and maybe some people in Charlotte are looking at possible land for a new stadium somewhere in Charlotte, but like not in Charlotte proper. So you figured that's going to be something that can only add to the craziness.
No doubt about it. All right, we come back after this break, and we'll wrap it up. Hour two's gone by very quickly. Great line of guests. Listening to Dunc and Holder, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. Stick with us.
Ask directions from a genie in a bottle of Jim Beam, and she lies to you.
before WrestleMania 34.
Lake Dawson
NXT
gets second
takes over
Panthers
New Orleans
GM job interview.
Saturday night.
Wow.
I remember Lake Dawson when he
Enter
played
the
for
win
Florida
tickets
State.
now
Yeah.
at sports1280.com.
Yeah, Julius Peppers, surgery, like all the stories on the Red Zone are all about the Panthers.
Unreal.
I saw with that.
And none of it's about
Did you see with the Eagles senior VP of Marketing and Communications? Remember that woman that like, got on? She resigned.
Oh wow!
She's out of there.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you got your ring now. We need you gone. Thanks.
How bad she was. Like, remember how bad they handled that thing? When they asked the guy to leave or revoked his credential.
Yeah, revoked his
security
credential.
come.
Yeah, had to call security on him. Revoked his credential. Oh yeah.
Adopt a cop. This Mardi Gras season, the New Orleans Police and Justice Foundation is encouraging parade goers.
So smooth, the silky smooth pipes.
In an effort to
telling you,
that dude.
You
need people might want to meet that dude.
You need to adopt that.
The next commercial is going to be adopt a streetwalker.
Streetwalker.
Carnival season. To learn how to adopt a cop, go to NOPJF.org. That's
You need to slip into that Corey Johnson silky smooth.
Mandina.
Their high school sports,
Trey Yen.
Seconds.
A national nonprofit offers more than 1,000 free online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Visit pcadevzone.org.
Dunc and Holder now. Eric Asher next at noon on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Welcome back. Jeff Duncan, Clyde Verdun on Country Fried Friday here at Dunc and Holder. Got about, 7 or 8 minutes left. I wanted to touch on a couple of things. I saw where Carl Dunbar, former LSU standout, hired by the Steelers on Mike Tomlin's staff. He'll be working with a really productive group there. Yeah. I think Pittsburgh comes here next year, but one of the stars on Pittsburgh, Cam Hayward, who is the son of former New Orleans Saints great Ironhead Hayward. He had a great year, 12 sacks. And, looking at the Saints' schedule next year, it's a great one.
It's going to be a fantastic schedule to, first of all, for true Saints fans who love the NFL and who want to see quality games. You're going to see a lot of quality games next year.
Yeah, I think the Eagles come here, right? Mm-hmm. You got the Steelers, and of course you got just the regular NFC South.
And then you're going to want to watch that rematch with the Vikings. Obviously, you're going to want revenge on them playing in Minnesota.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm going back to Minnesota next year. I've been 3 times this year, 3 times in the last 6-7 months, maybe not even that long. I've been to Minneapolis, and I might be going back this summer for another work-related event to see the X Games. This is a little tease for you. The X Games are in Minneapolis. I think they're at U.S. Bank Stadium and the Target Center.
Yeah.
And just a little tease here, but we might be in the mix to get the X Games down the road.
Okay. Well, we have a venue that could host. I'm sure the. Look, and with the X Games,
would you go to that? Would you attend some of that or not? You into the?
I've never really been into skateboarding. I rollerblade as a kid, but that was skating rink type stuff. But I've never really been to X Games. I understand how challenging it is because I'm not coordinated on a skateboard, never have been, and never want to get. I got on one once in my life, I never did it again. But it's quite a challenging sport, and it's interesting. But like we talk about for anything, the biggest stage for whatever sport is going to be huge. So the X Games is the biggest stage for skateboarding, rollerblading, motorcycles, all that kind of stuff. It's a cool event.
Yeah, they're being incorporated into the Olympic competition in both Winter and Summer Olympics. Yep. And speaking of, the Olympics are going on right now.
Yeah, they started today?
No, yesterday. Well, they actually started. Some events started even before the opening ceremonies, but the opening ceremonies were last night. And, I'm a huge Olympics guy. And Sean Jensen, who we had on earlier, I was mentioning how we ran into each other at the Beijing Olympics. My favorite event that I've ever covered, I've been in this business, unfortunately, a long time, was those Summer Olympics in Beijing. Of course, that was the Michael Phelps breakout Olympics. Yeah. Usain Bolt broke the world record. Of course, unfortunately, that was Lolo Jones' chance to win a gold medal for a former LSU great, and had the unfortunate hit the 9th hurdle. Right at the end, or maybe it was the 10th hurdle. I can't remember. It was one of the last hurdles, and she was going to win the gold medal, and didn't get a chance to win a gold medal there. But those Olympics were incredible, and if you've ever covered an Olympics, the athletes are incredible. They work for basically 4 years diligently to get to this one big event.
Yeah.
And there's just so much pressure on it. I
Absolutely.
marvel at their ability to perform under such pressure.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these athletes, these Olympic athletes, they're not playing other sports. They're not playing basketball. They're not playing any of these sports that we talk about, except for the soccer players. The players who play in the Olympics are actually U23. So in Olympic soccer, you can actually play a few senior level players who are above 23, but everybody else has to be 23 or under by a certain date. But those kids are still making loads of money. The rest of the athletes, track field athletes, they're not making a load of money. They've got to run all year. And they've got to be a part of like the Diamond Series, the IAAF Diamond League Series.
They make a little sponsorship money.
They make a little sponsorship money.
Oakley or Nike or something gives them some money.
But like,
they're not poor. But I remember Lolo had to get a job at Walmart in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
So she got a sponsorship deal after that.
2 minutes.
But she had to get a job. Right. And look, I'm a huge fan of like downhill skiing, and I like hockey. Obviously, I'll watch that. I'm into the Winter Olympics, even though I don't really participate much.
I think bucket list items for like sports fans, or specifically for me, is to go to at least one Olympic game event or like work an Olympic game event, and then of course naturally to go to World Cup final, Champs League final, something like that. I think all those events are like very seminal events that you would remember where you were in a sweet venue. And I'm hoping, if anything, for the World Cup 2026 will be here in America, so that'd be really easy.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, and then of course, always we'll talk about, if anything, after this season is over for the Winter Olympics, how big the curling population gets. And
not a big curling fan.
Curling lanes here in
They
New Orleans.
actually had a press event where you could go out and curl at the Super Bowl last week.
That's awesome. I would have done that. I totally would have done that, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah, it would have been fun to do. They did a good job of trying to incorporate the bold North and get people to embrace it. They actually took people on an ice fishing trip as well.
Wouldn't do that because
in the media.
I can't stand fishing. I hate it.
Sunfish.
That's about right.
Not good enough for me. All right, let's wrap up the show today. Great show
today, bud.
Want to thank Brett Martell, Todd Graffinini, Sean Jensen, and Joe Person. I want to thank you, Clyde Verdan, for working around the clock, man.
Hey, man. It's what we do at this time of year. Love it. I love what you do.
And hopefully we'll get Larry Holder back in the mix. Wishing him well. Hope he gets well from his sickness. And we'll be back, not on Monday and Tuesday. We're going to have Best Stuff shows on Monday and Tuesday. But we'll be back here Wednesday, live and in person. And if you missed the show, you can always catch it on SoundCloud, iTunes, and the iHeartRadio app. And you can pick up our podcast there.
10 seconds.
Everybody have a great weekend.
Everybody have a great weekend. NOLA.com, Sports 1280, iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder. Happy Mardi Gras, everyone.
Peace.
Dave, thanks, buddy.
All right, ladies. Y'all have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Happy Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras, brah.
Yeah, brah.
2014. Brian Shook has details.
Researchers at Columbia University said the
All
heavy
right, buddy.
media coverage
Appreciate
of
it.
That was good.
Entertainers' death
Yeah, we
certainly
we're
played a
getting better.
key role
Yeah.
in the